PR Connections Radio presents
And welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. And, it's live, folks. Anything can happen here. And we are on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. Check out the website that we have on there. And I would definitely recommend to everyone watching all around the world to go to the website and check out everything on there. Also, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the network. There's a lot of good conversations, some good back and forth going on there. So when it comes to the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button and turn on notification bell so not miss any episode of Vegas Hockey Hub. And subscribe to the network at PR Connections Radio or subscribe to our network at Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, we're going to be doing our 2024 NHL midseason grades. Now, earlier in the year, we did our preview show for the 2023-2024 NHL season. And since it is 50% of the way done, it is time to get into our NHL midseason report cards here on PR Connections Radio on Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, the way we are going to do this is a very simple. It's going to be an A, B, C, D, or if they've been absolutely atrocious, they will be getting an F here on the show. So let's get into it, and let's start out with the good old Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, as you see right there on the channel. And with the Anaheim Ducks, they are going to be getting a C- on the season. Now, when it comes to the Anaheim Ducks, this is a team that, when it comes to Anaheim, they had a really good start to the year. They've had some good talent. There's been some good back and forth going on with this team out there in Anaheim. But really, at the end of the day, despite that hot start, they have fizzled off really badly. This Anaheim Ducks team that just really hasn't developed and taken off as to what they needed to do. So I will say, when it comes to the Anaheim Ducks, them getting a C- seems like a fair grade and a fair assessment out there in Anaheim, out there at the pond, out there in Orange County. But, Anaheim Ducks getting a C-, like I said, despite that hot start, they should have gotten a B at the quarter mark. But at the mid-season, at the midway, they get a C- out there in Anaheim. And, really interesting to see what happens moving forward. So much young talent out there in Anaheim. So I kind of question and see how well they're going to be doing moving forward. But yes, so the Anaheim Ducks getting a C- on the midseason report card. Now, getting into the Arizona Coyotes, they get a solid B here on the show. Arizona Coyotes have done a relatively good job this year, have actually been an improvement from the year before. And despite the attendance and the fact that they're playing in a college hockey arena, it doesn't change the fact that the Arizona Coyotes have been one of the best up-and-coming teams in the NHL. A lot of good young talent that are coming through in Arizona. But yeah, so the Arizona Coyotes right now in that Western Conference, in the Central, they're actually in playoff contention right now. But yeah, definitely a good mark for the Arizona Coyotes. Like I said, halfway in the year, Arizona Coyotes, they will get a B when it comes to this. And I will say, starting out the Western Conference, we'll get to the Eastern Conference later on in the show. But, Anaheim, they get a C-. The Arizona Coyotes, they get a B. And then we have a team here that I kind of was back and forth on for a while. But overall, I will give them a B-, and that is the Calgary Flames. Look, with Calgary, I have to take into perspective what their expectations were at the beginning of the year. The Calgary Flames were not supposed to be a playoff contender this year. Not many people had the Calgary Flames in contention to be a playoff team, but yet mid-season into the year, and they are about on a 4-game winning streak. They're doing a lot of good right now, and they are only a few points out from being a playoff team right now in the NHL. So, with the Calgary Flames and everything that has happened this year, getting a B- is a very fair assessment considering what the Calgary Flames expectations were to begin the year. And I will say the next team, what's the nicest way to say that you have not done well at all this year? I mean, this is a Chicago Blackhawks team that if you didn't have Connor Bedard, you would not be watchable. I mean, I know you have Lucas Reichel. He is definitely another young guy on the rise, but the Chicago Blackhawks have been abysmal. We had the Corey Perry situation. That was a debacle in itself, and hopefully he can come back and return to the NHL soon. But with the Chicago Blackhawks, I'm just keeping it real. You're going to get a D, and if it wasn't for Connor Bedard, you would get an F on the season. I mean, Connor Bedard bumping you up a letter grade, that is a fair assessment. And, continuing our mid-season report card here on Vegas Hockey Hub, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. And this next team, they undoubtedly get an A on this part of it. The Colorado Avalanche have been one of the best teams in hockey over the last couple of years. And the Colorado Avalanche, the best record right now in the Central. They have already at 29 wins on the year, already over 60 points for Colorado. And, for the Colorado Avalanche organization, they have done some very good parts out there. Of course, you have the three-headed monster. You have Mikko Rantanen. You have Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon, and then Alexander Georgiev as your all-star goaltender out there in Colorado. And yeah, just relatively a great job has been done in Colorado. They have efficiently been one of the best teams all year round. And speaking of teams who have been good almost all year round, the Dallas Stars organization has kind of kept up the pace they had earlier last year. This is a Dallas Stars team that is already around 60 points on the year. They are a playoff contender in the Central Division alongside Colorado and a team we're going to talk about later. But this Dallas Stars team, led by Pete DeBoer, they should be a solid playoff contender this season, and them getting an A grade does make a lot of sense when you understand that the Dallas Stars organization has done a really good job continuing the momentum that their Western Conference Finals appearance had last year. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The Edmonton Oilers are an interesting case here on this show. Because the Edmonton Oilers, if you would have asked me at the quarter mark, they would have been a D at that point. Firing a head coach, Connor McDavid getting hurt, the offense was abysmal, defense looked like traffic cones just in front of the goalie, and Stuart Skinner was not doing well. Well, what ended up happening for the Edmonton Oilers is that after the quarter mark, they went on a 11-game winning streak and are now back in the playoff contention as a wild card in the Western Conference. So, after a very bad start to the year, they have now bumped themselves up to a B grade on the season. The fact that they are still in playoff contention it does show that the Edmonton Oilers have an insane amount of talent. They know what they're doing, and I like what I'm seeing from Edmonton. So, yes, that 11-game win streak helped them get to a B report card here on the midseason. And speaking of a team that has declined, unfortunately, after a great start to the year, the LA Kings get a C+ on Vegas Hockey Hub. Really unfortunate what the LA Kings have had happen to them at the beginning of the year. The LA Kings had such a strong start, one of the best teams in the Pacific. They seemed like they were undoubtedly heading towards a playoff run this year in LA. But the last month and a half have been abysmal for LA. This has been the very not good December and a very lousy January for the LA Kings. And this has been a LA Kings organization that's trying to get into the playoffs. They would be a wild card team at this point. But when it comes to the Los Angeles Kings organization, this is just a case where, you have lost 9 of your last 10 games in LA, and they've been struggling mightily since the beginning of 2024. So because of that, the LA Kings, kind of the opposite of the Edmonton Oilers, they get a C+ because of their downer that they have had the last couple of weeks. And as we're continuing with the Western Conference, we have to actually go over to Minnesota because, man, what a sad situation has happened in Minnesota. I mean, after all, we're waiting for one guy to do what he has done out there. Philippe Gustafsson, Marc-Andre Fleury, they're supposed to be a good back-and-forth tandem in net for Minnesota, but it just hasn't panned out this year. You also have the fact that you've had Kirill Kaprizov. He has gotten injured in Minnesota. And the fact that the Minnesota Wild have only won 2 of their last 10 games, and the reason why they're only at 41 points on the year. So for the Minnesota Wild, a very bad year in Minnesota. They fire their head coach. They bring in a new one. But unfortunately, unlike the Edmonton Oilers, it did not save Minnesota in this situation. So Minnesota Wild, they have to get a D. Very disappointing out there in Minnesota. The Nashville Predators are an organization that had a really good offseason. They signed some good talent. But what a lot of people didn't expect was for Nashville right now to be a wild card contender, which is what they have done. The Nashville Predators are exceeding expectations, not only because Philip Forsberg is an all-star, and indeed he is, but Juuse Soros doing a good job in goaltending, and more importantly, some of their young guys who are finally getting the call up to the NHL are stepping up in Nashville. So for the Nashville Predators, they have done a solid job, and once again, they are in playoff contention, battling for a wild card spot, and that matters very much so. So your Nashville Predators would get a B for anybody out there in Nashville, and they definitely deserve a B considering they are in wild card contention right now. So as we're doing our NHL mid-season report cards here on Vegas Hockey Hub, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. And this next team, I feel like I could just speak about for 10 seconds and you would get my point. But the San Jose Sharks get a flat F on this report card. Terrible offense, abysmal defense. The goaltending has been atrocious. And this has been a San Jose Sharks team that's been rebuilding for a while. Well, they need to go back to the drawing board because this team is not it. And you know what? People are going to say, oh, they're the rival of the Vegas Golden Knights. You're obviously going to have a little bit of bias towards the San Jose Sharks. Even if the bias wasn't there, let's just call it what it is. The San Jose Sharks are one of the worst teams in the NHL. Hands down, not even close. This team has won only 10 games all year. It's also the same San Jose Sharks team who has lost 9 of their last 10 games and have only registered points in 2 of those said 10 games. So for the San Jose Sharks, they deserve this F. And please try better next year. This team has been really unfortunate. As somebody who has family in Seattle, as somebody who's watched the Seattle Kraken live in person, I had so much high hopes for Seattle this year. This is a Seattle Kraken team that I was hoping would take the next step from that second round exit they had last year. But very disappointing is Seattle. Seattle Kraken had just really not lived up to what they did last year. Now, Seattle, 47 points at this point, 19 wins on the year, and they have gone 8-2 in the last 10 games. They're kind of starting to turn it around just a little bit, hence why I don't give them a D. But yeah, really disappointing this year. The Seattle team looks like they're a little bit aging. Their young guys haven't fully developed yet on the main roster. And Seattle, just unfortunately, if you didn't have the goaltending that you did, you would be an absolute D. But because of the turnaround you've had as a late, I will give you a C-. But really disappointing season for Seattle. And they would have to go on a marvelous run just to even make the playoffs in the Western Conference. And, the next team I'm going to talk about, they've been average this year. I mean, this is a team that really has been the definition of average, and that's the St. Louis Blues. I mean, this St. Louis Blues team, they're not in playoff contention. They're kind of a little bit far back from that at this point. And this team, I mean, Jordan Bennington has shown flashes at times. Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou. I mean, there's some good talent, don't get me wrong. But overall, they've just been average. I mean, there's really nothing nice or bad to say about St. Louis. They've just been average this year in the NHL. And because you're average, you're going to get a C on the year because that's pretty much the definition of average. Now, the next team that we have to talk about has not been average. As a matter of fact, they have actually blown off the doors of everyone's expectations this year, and that's the Vancouver Canucks, the Pacific Division leading Vancouver Canucks. This is a Vancouver Canucks team that has taken off over the last couple of months. They have the best record in the Western Conference right now as we're recording, and it's very well much deserved. They have 5 players going to the All-Star game. Very much deserved. Of course, Brock Besser has done a good job. JT Miller has done an outstanding job. You have Quinn Hughes, the face of the defense in Vancouver. And of course, you cannot forget about Thatcher Demko in net for Vancouver. So I will say your Vancouver Canucks, fellow people out there in Vancouver, British Columbia that watch this show, you are doing an amazing job this year. And I will say for Vancouver, because of the job you have done this year, you have exceeded expectations. You have done a lot better this year than most teams assumed they were going to be. So I will give you an A in Vancouver. And then lastly, before we get into the Vegas Golden Knights, we have to get to the Winnipeg Jets, who get an A on the year. The Winnipeg Jets, who have the best record in the Central Division, this team has definitely lit up the lamp when it matters the most. Not only are they on a current 9-game streak out of 10 games, but this is a Winnipeg Jets team that is second in all of the Western Conference in points. Connor Hellebuyck performing like a goaltender, a Vezina Trophy nominee in Connor Hellebuyck. You also have Mark Scheifele, who's done a really solid job putting the puck in the back of the net. And more importantly, you have a team that the bottom 6 have been doing relatively well. All 3 defensive pairings are doing a good job. And this is a Winnipeg Jets team that could be a playoff legit contender when it comes to the Stanley Cup. So Winnipeg Jets, they get an A. And then to round out the Western Conference, of course, we're going to talk about our team, the Vegas Golden Knights. And the Vegas Golden Knights are going to get a B here on the show. Let me explain why. The Vegas Golden Knights had an insane start to the year. All right, they had such a red-hot start. They were the last team to go undefeated out of every single team in the NHL. And then around the beginning of November, they had a little bit of a slow decline on a road trip. Then they got back at home, started winning a bunch of games back to back to back at T-Mobile Arena. And then in December, you had the mighty collapse. you had 7 out of 8 games that they lost in the end of December, beginning of January. And in the month of January, they have won only 2 of the said games so far with your Vegas Golden Knights. So, as we're recording this, the Vegas Golden Knights right now are only the second best team in the Pacific Division. 25 wins on the year at the halfway mark. Now, for the Vegas Golden Knights organization, there's still plenty of time to turn it around. This Vegas Golden Knights team, Aiden Hill's trying to come back. You also have some guys who are injured, who are making an attempt of trying to come back soon. For example, you have Jack Eichel, who just recently got hurt. We'll have to talk about that later on. But I will also say for the Vegas Golden Knights organization, because of the hot start and then the slow decline in the end of December, early January, your Vegas Golden Knights will get a B here on the mid-season report card. Now, getting over into the Eastern Conference, this is actually going to be an interesting back and forth here, but we're going to start with the Boston Bruins because, man, I wish I could give Boston an A. Like, the Boston Bruins to begin the year was an A rating. But as of late, they have started to show some cracks in Boston. I mean, it's a team that's still leading their division, but it's not as dominant as they once were. Florida is creeping up on them. And they're not even towards the best record in the East anymore. The New York Rangers are starting to creep up on them. So, the Boston Bruins, who were dominant and had one of the best records in the NHL ever last year, they've had a bit of a decline this year. So, the Boston Bruins will get a B+ on the year on our midseason report card. Going over to the Buffalo Sabres, they've been an average team this year. The Buffalo Sabres have been performing like an average team. Like the Buffalo Sabres, to put it nicely, in a 10-game stretch, they will go 4-5-1 or 5-4-1. Like this team barely plays like a 500 team. And their win-loss record, they have 19 wins, 21 losses. That's almost about an average team if I see it. So for the Buffalo Sabres, they get a C. They have just been an average team all year long. The next organization that we have to talk about is the Carolina Hurricanes. And you know what? B+ as well. This is a team that's doing, relatively speaking, a good job in the Metro. They're only a few points out of first over the New York Rangers. You know, they have scored points in 8 of their last 10 games. But for Carolina, they really just aren't the same team they were last year. The team that Carolina had the last couple of years has been more dominant and more better than what Carolina is doing now. So, for the Carolina Hurricanes, they get a B+. They're doing a solid job, but not good enough to deserve an A. And this next team, they're just going to get a flat-out F. I mean, the Columbus Blue Jackets have been one of the worst teams in hockey this year. There's really nothing else nice to say about it. I mean, they have some young talent, but overall, an abysmal team, one of the worst teams to watch in all of hockey. Johnny Gaudreau, I don't know why you went here. You're wasting your talent in Columbus. The next organization that we are going to mention, a team that, relatively speaking, has done well, and that is the Detroit Red Wings. Hockey Town is starting to pick up momentum again, but you have to ask yourself a very valuable question. Has Detroit peaked just a little bit? Like Detroit Red Wings getting a B-, they are exceeding expectations, but I have noticed that their recent run, it feels like they're picking up momentum right now. They're doing very good, but is this going to last in Detroit? That's just something that I do wonder long term. The next organization, they get an A, absolutely, and that is Florida. This team was an 8 seed last year, and right now in the Atlantic, they have scored points in 9 of their last 10 games, and they're only 2 points out from Boston as the first place in their division. they have performed excellently, very well in the NHL. So Florida, they get an A. They have done an amazing job this year. Not many people probably saw them doing this in the midseason report card heading into the year. Now the Habs, very disappointing. Montreal is a very disappointing team. I mean, this team, if it wasn't for Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, would be unwatchable. I mean, they just get a D. Very disappointing. I mean, not good to watch at all. New Jersey Devils are next. And you know what? Some people are going to call me a hater and say that I'm being too harsh on them. But the New Jersey Devils were a preseason favorite. The New Jersey Devils were mightily one of the best teams heading into the year, and now they are barely contending for a wild card spot as of this show. They have 22 wins. That's better than half of the teams in the Metro, but the New Jersey Devils are struggling mightily. So to get a C+ is a very fair assessment considering what they were supposed to do this year. The New York Islanders are next, and they've just been an average team this year. So because you've been an average team this year, you get a C on the board. I mean, New York Islanders have just been really, like I said, mid. They've just been an average team this year. Now, a team that hasn't been mid, and a team that has overwhelmingly exceeded expectations is the Blue Sweaters out there with the New York Rangers. 28 wins on the year, the second best record in the Eastern Conference. Tammy Panarin, Igor Shesterkin, all of the great talent in New York. They've done a fantastic job. So when it comes to New York Rangers organization, they get an A on the year for our midseason report card. They've done really outstanding on the year. This team has not. They've actually been one of the worst teams in all hockey. The Ottawa Senators. I really don't know what else to say besides the fact that this team is very bad to watch. They had to fire their head coach after the game against Vegas, and they have just not done what needed to be done this season. Retry again. Claude Giroux. I don't know why you came here, by the way. Philadelphia Flyers are next, and they have exceeded expectations. I mean, this team was considered one of the worst teams in the East heading into the year. But the Philadelphia Flyers are second in the Metro right now and are riding a 4-game winning streak heading into this episode. So, for Philadelphia, they get a B on the season. Now, a team that is kind of hard to talk about because it's kind of weird to say, but the Pittsburgh Penguins have been average this year. It's kind of hard to say considering that they missed the playoffs last year, but with them getting Erik Karlsson, Riley Smith, bringing in a bunch of talent to help out Sidney Crosby and Jake Guentzel, they were expected to do a lot more, and so far this year, they have just been an average team out there in Pittsburgh, and unfortunately, Pittsburgh gets a C just for being an average team in the NHL. And this next organization will also get a C because they have been average as well. I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning have kind of shown a little bit of falling off since winning those back-to-back cups. But losing Andre Vasilevsky, he was out for a while. If it wasn't for Nikita Kucherov, Tampa Bay would be a D rating. That's how much he matters to Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay getting a C, it feels like they definitely deserve it. And then the Toronto Maple Leafs have just been an average team this year. Not much that I can say positively about Toronto, except for their top 6. Nylander, Marner, Tavares, and Austin Matthews have done a stand-up job. Morgan Riley, as an all-star, he's doing what he needs to be. But, hey, the goaltending, yeah, Ilya Samsonov being put on waivers is an indicator of how bad the goaltending has been in Toronto. And the last team that we're going to mention is a team that's been incredibly average, and that is the Washington Capitals. They get a C If it wasn't for Alex Ovechkin, I don't know why anyone would watch you. You've just been an average team this year. So, as we have done our midseason report cards here in Vegas, I want to remind everybody very quickly that your Vegas Golden Knights got a B on their midseason report card. And just like we did in the preseason, just like we're doing in the midseason, when we get to the end of the season, we will do our final report card for the 2023-2024 NHL season. But until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rickelli, and this is Vegas Hockey Hub. Continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go Knights, go!